A while back, I posted a couple of videos about the native habitats of those Gen 1 Pokemon that aren't from Kanto, and the reception has been astounding. Seriously, thank you so much for watching, and especially to those of you who've commented on and liked the videos. You've helped this channel grow from barely 1,000 subscribers to over 4,000. You've also kept me busy replying to comments because I reply to all top-level comments, and I've had a lot of great discussions about Pokemon thanks to all of you. A lot of you have brought up some really great points that I'd like to follow up on with this video. I've learned a lot of things. For example, coconuts float on water, and that's how they propagate. As well, dinosaurs didn't actually coexist with samurai in feudal Japan. See, we don't have coconuts or samurai up here in Canada, so that was all news to me. Oh, and Gen 6 and 7 are not the same. Alola is in Gen 7, Kalos is Gen 6. I'm probably gonna mix them up again in the future, but anyways, there are some other outright mistakes I made about the Pokemon in the last video, so I want to address those first. Most importantly is that Aerodactyl is probably safe to put in Ancient Sinnoh despite its absence from Hisui. Legends Arceus takes place like 200 years ago, which I didn't know, I haven't actually played it yet, and Aerodactyl lived earlier than that, maybe a few million years earlier. So not only was it extinct long before Gen 4 takes place in Sinnoh, Aerodactyl lived virtually equally as long before Legends Arceus takes place. Sorry about that. I guess I should have spent more time playing Pokemon games rather than talking about them, huh? Next up is Eevee. While you can catch them in Black 2 and White 2, I'd forgotten that Unova was explicitly Gen 5 Pokemon only, and that the non-Gen 5 Pokemon in the sequels were all explicitly non-native. So while Eevee is catchable in the wild in Black 2 and White 2, it's not native to Unova the way that Patrat is. It's a special situation, kind of like Gen 4's Trophy Garden, so that means that, by my criteria, Eevee would be native to Kalos, like I'd originally said in the video before that one. My bad for incorrectly correcting myself. I also voiced a lot of controversial opinions, and some of them were ones that I didn't expect to be controversial, yet others that I thought would be contested went over really well. I guess that's the nature of these kinds of things on the internet. First of all, several of you have informed me that Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee are, in fact, games. And I guess if we can call visual novels games, we can call the Let's Go games games as well. But they're Gen 7, and they're weird, and they take place chronologically after Gen 1, and probably even after Gen 2, my only clue there being that Red's Pokemon are a higher level in the Let's Go games than they are in Gen 2. Maybe there are other clues, but I'm not looking those up. Anyways, the only thing this changes is that we can officially say that the Gen 1 starters are catchable in Gen 7's Kanto. And I guess Porygon is too, but I do like the idea that the wild ones are escapees from the Game Corner or something. Or maybe it's just a Digimon. The next big controversy was Execute. A lot of people say they're native to Alola, and again, there's definitely good arguments to be made there. The regular Exeggutor's Gen 3 Dex entries mention that it's from the tropics. Now this does suggest that it came from Alola, or at least somewhere like Alola. Do parts of Hoenn count as the tropics? Do the Sevi Islands? I don't know, but Alola definitely does, and it has that whole Exeggutor Island going for it. As a caveat, this is something that, as far as I can tell, was introduced in Gen 3, but Execute is a Gen 1 Pokemon, so being from the tropics may be a retcon, and it's really up to you how much you want to consider retcons, or the Pokédex entries entirely, which are known to be a bit, problematic. Now, I'm thankful that this caused so much debate because I learned a lot about coconuts. I mentioned moments ago that they float on water to propagate themselves across the oceans. The trees don't actually need to cross oceans, nor do any Spearow need to be involved, neither European nor African. However, Execute itself can't learn Surf. Now, I know that doesn't mean that Execute can't float, but we don't know that their buoyancy is the same as actual coconuts, especially since they're based off of eggs, which definitely can't float, unless they're rotten. If it were Ex-Coconut-acute, it'd be a little more conclusive that they can float, but they're Ex-Egg-cute. It's also possible that Execute have been brought to other regions from Alola for various purposes, or even that they use their psychic powers to assist them in any of these kinds of propagation. Lots of possibilities, but I actually like having them being from Johto in my list. That's specifically because I'm using the goofy Game Freak criteria of being from a region, where the first region it appears in is where it's from. The difference is that, instead of tying it to the generation, I'm tying it to being infinitely catchable in the wild. But I'm still going by the first region in the first generation where that holds true, which for Execute is Johto. The biggest reason is that more games could come out in the future and change where any of these Pokemon are from, which is fine, Game Freak is allowed to do that. But I want to have some sort of conclusive answer that won't change, and for me, that's generally the first released normal game in which a Pokemon is infinitely catchable in the wild in a normal area through normal means. That's much more satisfying to me than defining it as this place until Game Freak releases a new game and changes it. And if you don't like that, that's cool. Differences of opinion are what make this stuff exciting. I mean, I'm making this and you're watching it because we have different opinions from Game Freak, right? And I definitely get that Execute may have first originally come from Alola, it's just that by my criteria, I've got to put it in Johto. And while we're on the topic of criteria, a lot of people have asked, why can't a Pokemon be native to more than one region? And yeah, they definitely can. For example, Rattata is pretty clearly native to both Kanto and Johto, but Game Freak says we have Alolan Rattata and Kantonian Rattata. They chose Kanto because that's where Rattata was first introduced, so it meets their criteria for being a Kanto Pokemon, even though it's equally common in Johto. I'm using that same sort of logic for my list, with infinitely catchable being the criteria instead of just being introduced in that gen. That also means that even if there are more appropriate regions for a Pokemon to be from, I don't count it as the Pokemon's native region in my list. So Execute could definitely be originally from Alola, Mr. Mime could definitely be originally from Kalos because it's a mime and there's Reflection Cave there, and Kangaskhan could definitely be originally from a future Australia-based region. But I'm just going by where the Pokemon is first infinitely catchable in a normal wild area. Even if games like Legends Arceus like to throw wrenches in my ideas, like Eevee being in Hisui but not Sinnoh. I don't even know how to consolidate that one, but since Kalos is Gen 6 and Hisui is Gen 7, I'm going with Kalos for Eevee. So as a reminder, anytime I say a Pokemon is native to a region or from a region, I'm not speaking in ecological or historical terms. It's bad phrasing, I'll admit it, but what I mean by those phrases is that a Pokemon is first infinitely catchable in a normal area in the wild without any special tools or technology in that region. I'm not saying that every time. Too many syllables, but y'all get what I mean now, right? Next up is Mew. I thought I was just making a joke saying it's from Guyana, but that was one of my most controversial statements that wasn't about coconuts or dinosaurs, and controversial in both directions. I actually got a few comments from people in Guyana, and thank you for watching, by the way. Hello from Canada! I love the international community that we have thanks to the internet. A lot of people from Guyana loved the idea that Mew is also from Guyana and want to see a future Pokemon region based in Guyana. I'd be down for that. I've had some commenters say that Mew being from Guyana is a localization change that wasn't actually in the original Japanese script, but no one had any evidence to back that up, at least as far as I saw. So I did some digging, and found on the Japanese Pokemon Wiki this article about the journal entries in Cinnabar Mansion that explicitly mention Guyana, just like in the English release. And the article even points out that this line was removed from the Let's Go games. Since I couldn't find a text dump of the Japanese games, and I wasn't about to play through Pokemon Green in Japanese just to check this is as good as we're going to get for now. So it seems like Mew is, or was, definitively from Guyana, even in the original Japanese games. On the opposite end of the debate, a lot of people said that Mew is actually from Faraway Island, since that's where it's caught in an in-game event in Pokemon Emerald. Maybe only Japanese Emerald, but still. Mew has a map specifically for where it, and it alone, lives. And no, it's not this map. This is the real deal. Like other legendary or mythical Pokemon of the time, it's not infinitely catchable like normal in the wild. Since that's the norm for these special Pokemon, Faraway Island is good enough for me, even though it's event exclusive. The best part is, it seems like it's still possible to legitimately get the item needed to travel to Faraway Island if one mixes records with someone who has the item legitimately. Or you could hack it in, I won't judge. Now, wanting to consolidate these two ideas, that Mew is from Guyana and that Mew is from Faraway Island, I looked up to see if Guyana has many islands, and it does. So now I'm convinced that Faraway Island is an island off of Guyana, which also makes Guyana a possible candidate for a new region in the Pokemon games. Get to it, Game Freak! Some people have contested this idea entirely and suggested that Mew is actually from space. I think this view is amplified by its appearances in side games like Pokemon Snap and the anime. I don't believe the idea that Mew is from space is mentioned in any of the games, so I'm going to stick with Guyana for Mew, and Faraway Island, same thing. But a few commenters have brought up the idea that some other Pokemon are from space, and there's even in-game evidence for these. Specifically, Clefairy and Starmie. I'm sure most Gen 1ers are familiar with the throwaway lines about Clefairy and Moonstones coming along with some meteorite or something that crashed on or near Mount Moon, and Starmie's line is in the Dex entry for Pokemon Stadium, so probably not noticed by too many Gen 1ers back then, but super easy to come across on Bulbapedia and the like. I believe they're all suggested to be rumors. Now, rumors in the Pokedex can be completely fabricated and unrealistic. There are tons of YouTube videos on the topic already, so I won't get into that. But generally, when there's a rumor mentioned by an NPC in a video game, it is 100% factually true. So Starmie might be from space, but Clefairy almost definitely is. Of course, the player never actually goes to space, but I'd be so down for a space region in Pokemon. That can be Gen 11, after Gen 10 gives us Guyana. If and when that happens, I'll be happy to move Clefairy and maybe even Starmie from Kanto to space, but until then, they're infinitely catchable in normal areas in the wild in Gen 1's Kanto, so for my list, I'm going to keep them in Kanto. For now. And now that we've talked about space, let's talk briefly about time. There's been a lot of discussion about the fossils, including the Old Amber. There's a question about whether it even makes sense to talk about regions when discussing these prehistoric Pokemon. For all we know, we could have had a Poke Pangea when Aerodactyl flew around in the wild, but since I assigned Kabuto and Ammonite to Ancient Kanto, I think it's fair to allow Aerodactyl a region that way too. A lot of people seem to like the idea that Aerodactyl is from Ancient Kalos since it got a Mega Evolution there, and some people liked to move a lot of Pokemon to Kalos simply because they got Megas at all. Generally, that's not what I'd choose for my list, but Aerodactyl has something else going for it. The Megadex entry says that its Mega form is its true appearance. I mentioned before that the Dex entries aren't exactly the most reliable, especially when it says some scholars claim it, but hey, let's go with it for now. So if Mega Evolution makes Aerodactyl look like it did in prehistoric times, and Mega Evolution is only possible because of some crystally stuff that's only geographically present in what had become modern-day Kalos, maybe there's something there. Now, one commenter mentioned that in real life, pterodactyl fossils were first found in Germany, which borders France. So it's possible that Aerodactyl's true form being unlocked in Kalos, which is based on France, could be an allusion to pterodactyl fossils being found in Western Europe. Now, before anyone gets angry and tells me that Germany and France are two completely different countries, yes, I know that, but Game Freak has definitely done weirder things. There's one teeny tiny little caveat to that idea though. The mosquito in the Gen 1 Old Amber artwork. While it was removed from the artwork in later gens, Aerodactyl is a Gen 1 Pokemon, so I'm going to give more weight to Gen 1 evidence as much as possible. So we've got this lovely Jurassic Park reference that I mentioned in the last Kanto video, and a lot of commenters have informed me that a mosquito's lifespan is far too short to travel to different regions. This means that wherever the Old Amber is likely where the ancient Aerodactyl lived. In the last video, I concluded that they're from Sinnoh, because that's the first region where Old Amber can be found infinitely in a normal area. Wait, they're only available after getting the national dex? Oops. Alright, they're not from Sinnoh. And I don't think I want to count Black 2 and White 2 either, since Old Ambers aren't in the original Black and White until after the national dex too. That means that Aerodactyl are native to Ancient Kalos. There we go, mystery solved. If only I'd noticed that before the last video, then I would have saved myself the embarrassment of accidentally suggesting that pterodactyls should have been around in feudal Japan. Moving on, there's the case of Lapras. I said Lapras is native to Johto for appearing in Union Cave every Friday. It's debatable whether this counts as infinitely catchable as per my definition. It is technically infinite, but it's also limited. That's a bit of a paradox, but Lapras is definitely closer to the limited overworld Pokemon than it is to the regular Pokemon you can catch in the wild. So where is Lapras native to, if not Johto? Well, it's first found in the Sevi Islands, which I think makes it the first time I've assigned a Pokemon to that area. Are the Sevi Islands part of Kanto? Are they their own region? Tell me what you think, because the conversation doesn't end here. A number of commenters pointed out that Lapras seems to be a migratory ocean-faring species that was hunted to near extinction. Think whales. It doesn't necessarily make sense to say that whales are native to any particular country in general, they're instead native to the oceans. While whales can be seen in parts of the ocean near a particular country or region, it doesn't mean that whales, or Lapras, are native to that country or region itself. They're just sort of passing by. Or, since Lapras is caught in interior locations in Johto, the Sevi Islands, and even in Sinnoh, maybe Lapras is using these hidden indoor areas as breeding grounds. So I'm kind of undecided on Lapras. It makes the most sense for it to be native to the oceans, but it is first infinitely catchable in Johto, even if it's not a fully repeatable wild encounter. The Sevi Islands are the first place it's infinitely catchable in a normal area in the wild without being a limited encounter, but if you don't want to count post-game content, then it'd have to go in Sinnoh for being catchable in its Victory Road. No tricks there. I don't think there's any other Gen 1 Pokemon I really needed to follow up on, but let me know in the comments if I missed anything. Anyways, I'd like to thank you so much for watching. If you haven't already, remember to subscribe if you're looking forward to more of these videos about other regions. Those are definitely in the works. And I'm sure you all know about the like buttons and smashing this or that. Let me reiterate that I really appreciate you for watching the video, and for sharing your thoughts if you already have. If that's what you do, I look forward to more of our chats in the comments section. Until next time, have an awesome day and an awesome week.